Here we go, Angelo. I'm going into geek mode, as you call it, and we are here. This is the fall line with Chaos and Company, and just want to put a shout out. We are heading into fall, and almost places are starting to almost get open out west. Dave Basin, I believe, is open. Killington is blowing like crazy here in the east, and a few other places. Even though they got beat by that little, I can't remember the name of it, Angelo, the little resort in Massachusetts that put ice on the hill, and people went skiing. So even the beasts couldn't beat them. But we want to thank our friends of the podcast and hope people will support them, because they're absolutely supporting us with Blizzard Technica on here for 3 years with us and continue that relationship. And then we also have Nick's Boot Fitting that Angela and I will be seeing right after Thanksgiving to go see Nick and get our boots dialed up before management seminar. And then as we're putting them away, the snow fell, but nothing accumulated yesterday here in New Hampshire. But we had a little bit of flakes coming down. So the rollerblades may get a few more days, but it's time to turn the corner to skiing. And we have, for your lovely listening pleasure, we have Peter Kray, who is a big writer for us in PSIA. And we were talking just before we get on. I was like, I'm glad they have him because I can do the podcast, but I'm not much of a writer. The few times I have to. But Peter, thanks for being here with us.
I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
And my partner, Angelo Ross, who's been super busy with his new job with PSIA-AASI. I don't know why we just don't say that PSIA-AASI, because the Aussie crew likes to do that. That AASI always gets me. But Angelo, how's it going, man? Are you zooming it out or what?
Real good. Yeah, living the Zoom life. Stoked to talk to Pete. Pete and I've had the pleasure to talk to Pete. Been on the hill with Pete, hanging out with Pete in Finland, and I'm looking forward to this. The one thing I'm curious about, though, is I do know Pete can talk. So I'm wondering, we might have to do a mini series.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, if we had Pete and Rogan on at the same time, like it would have to be a reality show. Like we would just have a camera crew. So, but I'm joking. I'll tell you what, nobody can tell a story like Peter Kray. So I'm looking forward to what happens here in the next hour or so.
Because you teed up Rogan, I'll tell the story right now. So in Finland, we were the national team looked beautiful in their red, white, and blue uniforms. They just popped. And Eric Shackleton, who's the presidium of Interski now, had mentioned to me that one of his greatest joys was seeing any time a group of instructors, international instructors, walked by, there was always one red, white, and blue jacket in the group. So they were really getting new information and sharing information around the world. But I finished my last story for the week and decided to go out and free ski, and the groomers are absolutely phenomenal in Levy. It's a place you would actually go back to just for the groomers. And I get on the chair, and it's an 8-person chair, and I was like, I got this thing all to myself. I'm just gonna relax and enjoy the day. And halfway up, the chair stops, and I hear this voice coming over, and I'm above the demonstration slope, and it sounds like the Charlie Brown. Whoa, 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 whoa. And all of a sudden, from the base of the mountain, I hear Peter Kray. And I say, who knows I'm on this chair? And it's Rogan. He says, put the bar down. And they stop the chair if you don't have the bar down. And they will stop the chair and chill. And every member of the national team had the same story. That at some point they were on the chair and the chair stopped. That's for safety protocol.
They take it pretty seriously.
The other thing we found was there's a lovely restaurant called the Colorado in Levy, where Angela and I closed out an evening. But yeah, I'm really happy to talk to you guys. The season's right around the corner. We got a little bit skunked last week. I drove my skis up to Colorado and never got them off the roof and came home. But I have really high hopes for this season. Here in Santa Fe, El Nino is usually particularly kind to us. And I don't know how many of your listeners have actually know that there's a ski area in Santa Fe. And I feel like I put on my Chamber of Commerce hat here, that Santa Fe is actually at 7,000 feet. And Santa Fe Ski Basin is the 5th highest base elevation in North America. The base chair is 10,350 feet. And that's higher than the summit of Jackson Hole. and we've got 1,800 vertical feet, and it's just the real. It's one of the remaining independent ski areas. It's super diverse clientele of people just enjoying themselves. And if anybody gets through New Mexico and wants to come ski Santa Fe, it's well worth the trip. But no base lodging. You'll stay in town, but drive up and make sure you hydrate. Make sure you remember what elevation you're at.
Yeah, we don't have those elevations out here in the East. We go, hey, over 4,000, and everybody from the West is like, are you kidding me? That's like, we're not even halfway up to the base yet. So, yeah. So, but Peter, can you just let us know a little bit about your role? I've seen it written two ways with PSIA here in AASI, in terms of the lead content officer and then also lead writer. And I see your name on a ton of the articles, as we have in the 32 degrees coming out, especially stuff from Levy and the things on the strategic alignment. But just a little bit on your role with them.
The lead content officer sounded a little too serious. So lead writer, just to simplify what it is. And I do get to take point on quite a bit of our content. And it's one of the easiest jobs in the world because every instructor has great stories to tell. And just being a conduit for those stories, and especially with the team and with all they've done to achieve the status they have now and all that they provide, not just to the association, but to the industry overall. It's every day I wake up and there's more content than I can actually report. And the thing about these folks is, I think we talk a lot about game improvement in a lot of other sports, especially golf or tennis or football. I don't think the general public thinks enough about game improvement in skiing. I think that everybody, if they took one lesson a year or one clinic a year, would have a better season. But if you go to any member of the national team and ask them what they're working on, they won't blink. They will tell you exactly. And that's the pace that they ski and snowboard and teach at. Is that it's just this constant curve of improvement. And I was joking that I think I sent you this in an email, Dave, that I'm not getting paid to ski. I'm getting paid to write about skiing. These guys are getting paid to ski. And when I go ski for a week and with the team, my skiing starts to go to hell because I'm wondering what they would fix every time I ski by. And I had a moment with one of my favorite guys on the Alpine team where we were Big Sky, and he watched me ski a run. I said, "I knew that was you the first turn." I said, "Well, give me a bone, buddy. What would you fix?" And it was only a couple of years later that he said, "You might want to just stay in the turn longer." So that's my mantra going into this season.
Stay in the turn longer.
Stay in the turn a little bit longer.
Yeah, and you did teach at one point, though. That's what I wanted our listeners to kind of know, that it's interesting. I know you've mentioned you're not a certified pro, haven't been certified in the past, but I know you taught. I think it was right out of college.
I spent 4 years in Jackson Hole. I'm very proud that we. The year before I got there, I think they hired everybody who tried out. And then the year I got there, they had 70 plus tryouts and they only hired 12 of us. So I was, one of them was my best friend from college. And then another guy who I went to college with and never met, who later married my cousin. So we're all St. Lawrence University alums. So we had 25% of the hires, and it was one of those magical, the people I got to ski and learn from. And, people like Theo Miners, Rich Lee, Rennie Burke, Pat Campbell, Nathan Emerson, the Jeff and Julie Zell. These people were all pioneers in big mountain riding. And to be in that environment, and I remember somebody telling me that the mountain's going to teach you something new every day, especially a mountain like Jackson Hole. And I really enjoyed it. it was just a fantastic time to go out, and I always tried to make sure that anybody I took out on a lesson really had something of value, and that they had a really good experience, and they had better skiing, and they just had a better time. So I'd say I've always been. It's always been a passion of mine. It turned out that writing was the path I was supposed to take.
And it's interesting to me because, as I spoke to you a little bit, and Angelo, when we were getting ready to start this, I'm like, this is a little different. My research wasn't like, this is a certified pro. It's one of our people on the national team. We've been pretty lucky with our guest and the national team coming on, and we were lucky to have Wayne Wong, and Wayne Wong was still a certified pro in Canada and went all the way through to become like level 4 trainer. So this was different for us. But I did find, which I thought was pretty interesting, that I'm hoping you'll speak a little about, but I found some info that you were said it to be one of the 250 most influential people in the snowbiz. Do you remember that?
Yes. This is so. Lovely wife and I both grew up in Colorado and met at St. Lawrence, and we both always we were always skiing. We were always, we always loved literature, loved to read. And she got transferred down here to Santa Fe. And I was just starting to write freelance for ski and powder. And I got a job here, first tuning skis the first winter. And here's the funny part, just going back to Santa Fe, I was looking up at the mountain and it was just covered in snow. And I said to my neighbor, I'm going to go tour up there for some runs. He said, you could ride the lifts. I said, there's lifts? I've had a pass there for 25 years now. Yeah. Then I had a job at a newspaper, and then I was looking at the want ads in the Santa Fe newspaper, and there was a job for managing editor for a magazine called Winter Sport Business, which was the trade magazine for the ski and snowboard retail. And it was 5 blocks from my house. And to basically completely relocate to New Mexico and then find a full-time job writing about skiing and snowboarding that close, it's just, you can't make that up. But I ran the show dailies for many years for the trade shows. And I think that might be where some of that came from. I couldn't tell you who decided to include me, how that came about, but it was quite an honor, and it was really nice to keep reporting on the back end of this sport. I think that there's such great media on the consumer angle that it's I think the guys like us and a lot of the people that we spend most of our winter with, we geek out on those details. We geek out on the stuff that the consumer never hears about. That's what we like to get on the chair and hash over.
Yeah. Angela and I never geek out, right?
Well, I don't.
Oh, here we go.
Pete, let me ask you a question. We hear so much perspective in the industry from business, from accounting, from legal, from human resources. And I know it's necessary. Like, I get that. I'm not saying it isn't, but it's a pleasure to change the record sometimes. How would you encourage just say young people, maybe late high school or college age people who are more humanities oriented, to find a place in the industry? Because that's really what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's up to the person. That person needs to see what their path looks like. And you go to any ski area, and there are those locals that only the other locals know about, who are the heroes. And they may drive the bus. They may be a fry cook. They may clean rooms. They may shovel snow off the roofs. But they get after it when it's time to get after it. So I think to find that niche, obviously with the changes the pandemic wrought, which they only accelerated with how hard it is to live in a mountain town in a lot of places right now. That niche might be a little narrower, but I would just you just have to go do it. My best buddy from the Jackson days, he did very well for himself after he left in the stock industry, and truth be told, we didn't know how we were going to eat every night. Sometimes, but we knew we were going to ski all day. And anytime I talked to him, he says, I would go back there in an instant. Just pick up the phone, and we're going right back to that place.
Yeah,
it is that magical. So I think, Angela, I'm trying to give you when people, I'm of the age that enough of my friends now have kids that are graduating from college or high school, and they want to be writers. And I tell them all the same thing. I say, write what you want to read, trust your voice, and take chances. I think that's kind of life, right?
I hope so.
That you've got to say you've got to just assure yourself that what path you choose, if that's the path you chose, it's the right path for you. And I think there are all these niches. Tuning skis, tune the skis all night. There was a buddy of mine who I landscaped with in the summer, and he was a groomer at Jackson, and he lived all the way over in Victor. So some nights he just slept on the couch. His only pair of skis was a pair of 225 downhill boards, because he just wanted to go just lay arcs on the stuff he groomed the night before. There's those people out there.
Yeah. Do you remember your first time on snow?
No.
Or were you too young?
Too young.
What are some of the first memories skiing for you?
Well, it's funny because my brother has two boys, and my brother skis Crystal. That's become his home mountain. And he was the president of CMAC for a couple of years, and both his boys grew up in the race program. And Jeffrey's his name, and he's 2 years older, and we always had a competition of which one of us was on snow first, because we were both 2 years old. And Wyatt, my younger nephew, has the family record 1.5. So, but to your question, Dave, I remember I started out on wooden skis. I got probably the first 12 years of my life, everything I had was the hand-me-down stuff. I was the last person in the family to ski it. And I remember a lot of slow days. I remember wax being really, really important. But I just remember the feeling of being on the chair or pressed against the gondola window, and just being around all these happy people. There was, and it obviously was a magical time to ski some of these areas before they blew up. But there was just my dad's best friend is a guy, Don Welch, and Don was one of the first Vail Ski School directors. And so we stayed with Don a lot, or we stayed at a place called Peeper's Palace, which was a lodge off the Minturn exit, and all the volunteer patrol families could stay there. You just had to make sure you reserved your room, and each family had their own little double bunk bed rooms. But every day we would go out, and this was the 70s, so all the guys would go be patrollers, all the ladies would go ski with each other, and we would have this rat pack of kids just swarming down the mountain.
So you obviously have a true passion for skiing. I mean, that's obvious, and I think it is even in your writing. And you have a little teaching background from out of college and that. But how did you? I mean, there's a lot of time in between, I guess. But how did you come about writing for PSIA-AASI?
So I went at Winter Sport Business. We really did. We were real reporters. We treated it like as a real news outlet. As funny, because my newspaper job just prior to that, my beat was the police report, business and schools. And every day, my first stop was the police station. And I would get the crime report. It was Los Alamos. It wasn't a long crime report. And there was some things you're like, that's illegal. And once a month, there'd be a kid waiting for me outside the door saying to the newsroom, please don't put me in the police report today. And so I came from this, they hired me because we were really doing real snow sports journalism. And then when that magazine folded, I was hired as the U.S. editorial director for Ski Press Media. So for a few years, we were the free magazine that you picked up at retail. And they were launched out of Montreal, and then we launched in the U.S. and then we launched in Europe. And for a little while there, we had the largest ski magazine in the world and the largest ski test. And then the recession crushed all of that. And I had always, or one of the former PSIA-AASI CEOs, Mark Dorsey, had always invited me up for team training, and he always invited me out for team tryouts. And so I always had this inside look at what really mattered and what the team was actually doing on a regular basis. And it was always fantastic just to see these people on snow, and then especially during team tryouts, to see all the hoops they had to go through, just the impromptu presentations, the prepared stuff, and then the actual skiing. And it got to a point where Mark called me up and said, the first book I published was a book called The Monster. It was a self-help book that I was hired by a nonprofit to write. And it did fairly well for a little while. And actually the San Diego Chargers had it in their outreach programs. So somewhere in this closet here, I've got a CD-ROM of all these gigantic humans handing this book to little tiny people. And so Mark had seen that book, and he called and said, our 50th anniversary is coming up. Do you want to write the history of PSIA? Of course I do. And it was a challenge because a lot of that stuff hadn't been documented, but it was exhilarating to see how this association has continued to be so forward looking. When you look back to just trying to get past final forms, when you look at the white book, when you get to skiing right, where for the first time there's all these mental aspects are coming into it. It's not just you have to ski like this, but you have to employ your mind too. And embracing snowboarding, embracing adaptive. I think we still, if you go back and look at Ann Shorling's presentation from Levy, there's still a long way to go in terms of gender equity. But what I saw was that in interski was, it was almost like you could tell a storyline from each interski to the next interski. And that's really how I got into it. And at the time, we did not have a robust website. Everything was really print. So reporting on this on a daily basis for the book, we started utilizing the website a lot more just to post this content as we're moving forward.
And that's The American Snow, right?
Yes.
Is the title.
Yep. And it's still available. It's still in the warehouse. There's still copies.
It's still a copy. Well, we got to push them out there, but
I'll sign them for you when I see you.
Yeah. And speaking of the interskis, you use that as kind of you were saying that's kind of your storyline to follow the progression through the interskis. You talk about that in one of your articles. You just have, was it this falls or was it the spring? And yeah, because you went through that a little bit with the learning connection model. Just that kind of storyline, how that's developed. Now, was that spring or fall? Angela should know.
That should have been spring. Yep.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've got an article in the winter issue that I think the learning connection model is basically a blueprint for all good education. And I think what the team has created there, it really is a breakthrough. And we've been around my house, we've been looking at how to incorporate the learning connection model into everything we do. And so I have 2 large dogs, as Angelo knows, that are just my pride and joy. And they go to a lot of different rally classes and agility and all these things. And there are a lot of aspects of the learning connection model I can see that some of my dog trainers might incorporate and benefit from. And I'm someone who learns by failing. Like, let me mess up a couple times, but let me try it, whether that's fly fishing or these training procedures. And a couple times I've been with trainers and they start to correct me the moment I start to do the task. And it's like, well, give me a second here. And what we found out is that in our household, we've got pretty strong people skills, decent teaching skills. Our technical skills is a weak point. We're the people who are on YouTube all the time. Well, how do you fix that? We don't know. And I think that in this profession, there are a lot of people who have great technical skills, but maybe they need to work more on the interpersonal skills. And I think that's why it's so well-rounded. That's why it's so holistic, is that every one of us could pick one of those at any given day, that would be a weak spot. And that's a place where you can improve.
Yeah. Well, and I know Angelo's been a big push, and he's going to win this new job. He definitely wants things to always think of the learning connection model, right, Bub? I mean, it's as we build new things or education going out there, how does it roll around the learning connection model? And I'll stop. I'll let you talk.
Well, the short answer is yes, but I'm wary of saying yes, because there's a perception sometimes that then the association expects people to be a certain way, to ski a certain way, to teach a certain way, to behave a certain way, But that's true, but the qualifier is as appropriate for the situation, as appropriate for the people that you're with, So, yeah, I think the learning connection idea, the concept, is it's rich enough and it's versatile enough that it can. I haven't come across a situation yet on the ski hill, and I also used a previous job to design some training for experienced bicycle tour guides at a company I worked at. And I have yet to find a situation where it doesn't work as it's written. I haven't seen the need for an addendum yet or an appendix to it. So with that preface, yeah, I think people would do well by themselves to filter their thinking through that model, But I'll also be the first one in line to say models are not reality. Models are models. Models are conceptions of reality. It's easy to find an exception to most models. And I'm sure the learning connection is the same way. But is it robust enough to handle most situations, or, in my case, like all situations I've encountered? Yeah. I would love it if people filtered their thinking through it, And to Pete's point, like using it at home is terrific. And like I said, like when I was charged a couple of years ago with designing this training for these bicycle tour guides, it's the first thing I went to, and it totally worked. So yes. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted your thoughts. I mean, I know you've talked about that too. We should think of that when we're creating stuff, or we shouldn't have stuff defray from what our main model is. Mm-hmm. So I try to keep that in mind, because if not, I might hear from the education development manager.
Oh, you're going to hear from.
Oh, so Peter, I know in the book, The American Snow: The History of PSIA-AASI, you talked a little bit. There's some things in there about the influence PSIA-AASI has had on the ski industry. Just for people to know a few things that they could read about it. There are a couple things that are highlights from the book that you feel that they've had some good influence on the ski industry.
I think that this is just coming from the event last week. I think the student focus is number one. Thanks, Mo. That really turning the spotlight on what the students' needs are has been an ongoing theme. And I think that going into Interski and Levy, where the motto, or I guess I'm looking for a better word, but the theme was the guest experience is everything.
Yeah.
And to have that be worldwide right now, that's a pretty cool concept. I certainly give PSIA-AASI a lot of credit for instilling that in other people. And I think that you see, just to Angelo's point of saying, well, you have to ski like this or you have to ski like that. There's a lot more emphasis on skiing in a way that makes you happy. And how can you ski better in the way that gives you that sense of freedom, that gives you that, that flying down the mountain thing that keeps bringing us back every day and every run. That would be the other thing that I think that we've done. And when I say we, it's just because I get used to saying that in these groups. But PSIA-AASI has done. Go get him, boy. Is the interdisciplinary sharing of education and best practices, that you'll still go see other countries that, hey, alpine's over here and snowboard's over here, and we probably don't have adaptive. So it's the embrace of any way that you want to enjoy the snow. And the team that this is their last term right now, they did more in 3 years. Each team usually has 4 years, but because of the pandemic, the previous team stuck around for another year, and then they had tryouts. So this crew only had a 3-year term. But I just get the sense that what the point they've reached and where they can take this next is they have set the stage for the future. So but it really, I guess going back to the most basic point, I just sense that there's this emphasis on whatever you show up on, whatever you want to do, we're going to give you the best experience possible.
That's pretty cool. And speaking of showing up on any gear, you're not just an alpine skier, you tele ski. Angelo is calling himself a tele skier nowadays. And we just got to get him out. We were supposed to ski together at Big Snow. I had my tele gear on, and the poor guy got sick and couldn't come. So we still have that tele date to get out there and snow together on the tele gear. We haven't done it, but you've gone through the years, and that whole thing of being one of the 250 most influential in the snow biz has been, you've been pretty involved in the past with different magazines and that, and a lot of gear tests and manufacturers in both, and not just alpine or tele. I think a lot of snowboard stuff also, gear. So I grew up in Park Hill, Colorado, and I went to East High School. And there were 4 or 5 of us there that were among the first 50 snowboarders in Colorado. And we would set up our afternoons. We would have study hall, photo class, study hall, so that we could take off at like 1:30 and go ride Berthoud, because you still couldn't. I had the little red Burton, and with the rubber bindings. And nobody, there was still before anybody was letting snowboarders ride the chairs, but Berthoud was one of the first 3 or 4 areas in North America to let you ride the chairs. And for about 6 years, we would just hitchhike back up, and the things we didn't know about tree wells and avalanches.
somehow, somehow we made it. I'm knocking on wood right now. And we would get these people, and every single person who picked us up to drive us back to the top of the pass was like, "What are you on? What is that?" And then when I went to college, we had this place called the Snow Bowl, which St. Lawrence still owns, and it's just a little tiny abandoned ski area. But we could just go hike that and get lake effect snow all day, and that was beautiful. And I've just always been fascinated by any way to slide. And Telemark was one of those low snow years here in Santa Fe when all we had was a few groomers, and that made those getting on free heel made those groomers seem really big again. And I've still got my leather lace up Oslos. I've got my Merrill Super Comps. Oh. I've got my Scarpa T-Race. And I have a couple old pairs of skis that I have a pair of Jostmark Classic Noodles. I don't know if you ever saw those. Yeah. They were made out of Idaho. Beautiful, beautiful skis. I had an AT setup, and these are still undrilled. Huh. And I'm probably gonna go to Volet or who are our buddies out at Jackson and Rainey, and I think I'd just like to get a classic setup and just I love that turn. Yeah. And there's no other place in snow sports where you can have that much effective edge when you're in a full, completely knees down, and you've got almost 250 centimeters of edge on snow. And my wife, who grew up alpine skiing, she was also competitive soccer and hockey player. She got on Telemark and she never looked back. She felt trapped on alpine after that. She had to be able to move her feet.
Now, have you been on the NTN setups?
I've not.
No. Yeah, that's like a new animal for me.
Yeah, I think I'm as old school as I can get in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. Angelo's he's going to be NTN for the first time this year.
No, I skied NTNs all last year.
Oh, did you? Oh, that's right. You got them last year. I was thinking you just got them.
No, Angelo, you're Telemark cert too, right?
I am. Yep. I have my level 1 telly. Hopefully a little more time this year to get on them. So yeah, it's a joy. It's kind of hard to describe the I guess it's a freedom. There's a freedom element to it, when your heel moves, but there's control. It's just super cool. But it as a relatively accomplished alpine skier, going to telly, getting more involved with telly, it makes a little hill look big, man. Like you gotta respect it.
Wait till we take you off piste, Angelo. A little tree skiing, some bumps.
I'll sign up.
Yeah, bumps are fantastic on telly. That's actually one of the funnest things.
I've dabbled.
Just make sure you don't wear fleece because you'll be very white. It'll stick to you.
My telemark skiing in the bumps kind of looks like if you throw a cat out the window.
I don't know. You get that cool stuff from the skateboard. It's a hypothetical cat. I haven't thrown a cat out of a window, but I can picture what I think it might look like. Yeah. So, Peter, being a professional writer and journalist, I was hoping you'd give some advice to, and I'm going to use a generalization here because I kind of see it in our ski world, the world that, at least that I'm in within the ski world, that we have definitely a fear of writing, kind of like a lot of people have a fear of getting up in front of a group and speaking. A lot of ski pros will have an easier time getting up in front of a group and public speaking than they will writing an article or writing something technical about something that they do every day on the hill and talk tech all day. Is there some advice as you've been working with ski pro and ride pros so much that you could help them to get the courage to write more, so we'd have more for our members and more information out there for folks? 100%.
And I think that Angelo and I were joking about this last night, how many how many people we know in this industry who could basically be running a Vegas lounge act because they're so comfortable with a microphone. And you get them in front of a room full of people, and I can't do that. Right? That makes me very uncomfortable to be in a situation. That's probably part of why I'm a writer. And I think Angela's heard this story too. I'm looking at the bookcase in my office here, and I've got a couple shelves that are filled with climbing books and surfing books. And I don't really do either of those things, but I really like the writing. And where I've come around is I feel like there's just not enough good ski literature. And when I sat down and finished my novel, The God of Skiing, 10 years ago next year, I felt like that was something I could give back to the sport. That it surprises me how many people think that the main character actually existed. And I've had some people who are like Associated Press who've been writing about skiing for decades. And actually someone from the US ski team is like, wait, that guy's not real. But to actually, to your direct question, I think the biggest problem that people get into when they sit down to write is they start to change their voice. If you just write what you want to say, that's the way to make sure that if you write what you would say to someone personally, that's the way to make sure you're writing a true sentence. And my mind is a 5-paragraph essay that I want the first paragraph to tell you the three things I'm going to focus on. I want the second paragraph to go into depth on the first thing I said. Third paragraph into depth on the second question. Fourth paragraph, the third thing, and then the fifth, I just tell you why I said all that. And so usually when I talk, I put things in threes. And I think that's effective communication. I think that most of the people we work with on a daily basis are effective communicators. That's why we also had this talk about how you talk about all these junior instructors who we get on the hills every year and the job skills they have that probably nobody else in their class has, because they are public speaking. They are taking a bunch of people they never met and having them all work towards a common goal. And they are outcome focused. That, these are the things I think that what everything Angelo and Dave and, you Penn are doing, these are the things that we've in the past found hard to quantify, but now we're actually quantifying them. And I think that when people sit down to write, they feel like they have to do something different. And I can't remember the author. I think it was Henry Miller, who some of his best work was he just started writing letters to a friend back in the States and just telling the friend what was happening in Paris. And that was his truest voice. And maybe that's a tip, Dave. Maybe that's just write this like you and I were just going to write this to each other and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to do, and here's what I want. But once again, back to your original point, I feel like that there's so much room for people to share their experiences. We tell these stories on the chairlifts. We tell these stories at the end of the day. You just have to write them down the way you would have told me if you told me in person.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I find is, trying to encourage people is they don't think they have something important, yet just their story or their experience is important. Yeah. And they're always like, oh, well, what I think about this or what happened when I was at Interski is not that important. But I think that those that didn't go, I mean, there was a lot of our folks here went, they're part of the delegation that went outside the national team from the U.S. And it'd be great for all of them just to write down one thing that really meant something to them that was their experience. But it's hard sometimes. I think they're like, no one will be interested in this.
Well, you just raised an interesting point, because I feel so much of our sport is spoken word. And back to the God of skiing, I was just thinking about how many all these hills that have local heroes that if you don't ski there, you'll never know who that is. But if you're there, you know everything about that person. You know, he or she is the best skier, snowboarder, telemarketer on the mountain, but only the people at that mountain know it. But going back to the spoken word, I wonder if programs like this are helping to put that information out there in a way we never could before. So what you guys are doing, we're broadcasting these conversations now.
Yeah.
They're not just happening to be forgotten at the end of the day when we're driving home. You guys are creating a record of all of this. And, you know, the fact that we've got the record, you know, I'm not going to go off into AI right now, but what you guys, if people just want to conduct these interviews live and just take the transcript of the recording, they've already got something they can use as a template for what they want to write.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I get so excited. I was just watching, Interski from home. I could see the team coming down. I had the camera or the webcam was up on the hill, and then I was watching the keynotes. And I don't even, Angelo, I don't know what you were doing. I was texting you like even before Ann finished, like, dude, we got to get her. Go find Ann. Get her before we want her to come on the podcast. That was such a great keynote. And Angelo's like, what are you talking about? I'm doing this for now. You were in some other session, I think, at the time. And Angelo's like, slow down.
It was really powerful.
Yeah. There was a lot.
She has the research to back it up.
Yeah.
It wasn't just an opinion.
And that's what hit me.
Yeah.
But you remember me getting on you, Angela, and you were like texting back, like, well, slow down. What are you talking about?
Hard to distinguish that example of you getting all over me from all the others that happen so much in my life.
Oh, man.
Hey, Peter, I'm going to put you on the spot. Your top 3 most influential people in this world of skiing.
You got to give me a subcategory. There's so many places. Let me rephrase it this way. And this goes back to one of the original questions you had about how people get in this industry. And one of the greatest people we've ever had in this sport is Glenn Blake. Yeah. And I was in St. Anton with him at Interski 2011. And he and Kimberly and I walked over to the practice slope together, and he had full mohawk up. And it took me 10 minutes to get to the practice slope. And it took him an hour and a half because he stopped to talk to everybody who wanted to talk to him. And he stopped to share that stoke. But he is a member of PSIA. And he has always said, this is the place where people like us can go pro. That you want to be a professional skier? You want to be a professional snowboarder? Be an instructor. That's the door. The door's open. And you can make a living going out there and teaching and sharing the sport. But to your question, Angela, I was thinking that growing up, we had the Mayer brothers, we had Peekaboo Street. And if anybody'd sat any of the 3 of us down at any point and said, oh, by the way, you're going to have Tommy Moe. You're going to have Lindsey Vaughn. You're going to have Julia Mancuso. You're going to have Ted Leggety. You're going to have Bodie Miller. You're going to have Michaela Schifrin. We would have thought, just give us one of those people and we'll be happy. And the fact that we've had that many just lights out amazing athletes, and I'm not even talking about snowboarding, where we really pretty much invented it. That we would have been ecstatic. Just give me Bodie, just give me Ted. I don't care. Just give me one star that that I'm not going to be shocked when they win. I'm actually going to expect it. I'm actually going to think that this person has the talent. It's not going to be a fluke. It's not going to be one of those Olympic Games moments that somebody nobody's heard of comes out of nowhere to snap up the downhill gold. But to get personal about it, to me, it's my dad. You know, I don't have anything. I don't have any of this without Pops. And I think that's the personal element, that we all have somebody that brought us into this, and we can't imagine being anywhere else. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Going back to just the instructional experience, is that we're sharing the lifestyle that we've all committed to. We're all in. Every one of us is all in. And Dave, you had said something about just identifying as a skier, is that we have this clientele that they may ski 6 days a year, but if you ask them what they do, the first thing they're going to tell you is they're a skier.
Yeah. They
won't even blink. It won't be pickleball. It won't be hockey. Well, maybe pickleball. This is an identity for everybody, and that's why we're sitting here, sunny day in November.
Yeah. Crazy. And go ahead, Angel.
And it's I don't know if this is too much of a stretch. Tell me what you think, but it's interesting that the folks you mentioned, Blake said be an instructor. That's teaching skills. You mentioned all those racers with their superhuman technical skills. And then your dad was the people connection. Look at that. So learning connection.
Nicely done, buddy.
Yeah. See, he can do it, Peter. He can do it.
Can you send me the notes on that, Angela?
It's being recorded. You can watch it.
I have to write a column.
We'll get AI can write it based on this recording.
Yeah, every time I messed around with that, it doesn't have the emotional aspect.
Yeah. So here's a question. We haven't mentioned this name, and I'm curious on both of your opinions. It's on influential is Deb Armstrong, Olympic gold medalist, all the way to our national team, putting a lot of content out there right now. Some great content, YouTube, and I mean that's a pretty amazing influence there.
You're 100% right, and her sharing her knowledge as an instructor and her talent, yes. And I think the message that she's cutting through a lot of the junk that's out there, and she's confronting it and showing that there are better options. I agree, Dave.
Yeah.
What I like about the way Deb does it is that it's completely unpretentious. You know, it's just so real. Like the way she talks about it makes sense. It's clear. I think that's great.
I'd never heard of the white pass turn, at least that I remember, till interski, and now I'm seeing it everywhere. It's one of the first things I want to do when we get back on snow is work on a couple white pass turns, along with staying in the turn longer.
There you go. Well, and speaking of interski, that was something I wanted to know. I mean, it's hard to write everything. I mean, there's so much going on. Talking to everybody that was at interski, what's out there that you may still want to explore and have an article on or write on? Is there some interesting? Was there a country doing something interesting they haven't finished that you're still looking at?
Yeah, I was pretty U.S. team centric, and I really wanted to capture all the hard work that went into what we presented, and the team members themselves were doing a lot of the reporting on the other countries. So if you go to the snowpros.org and look at our interski content, it's a lot of live reports from the actual team members themselves. And that's really cool to see what they saw. You think of like doctors going to watch another doctor perform surgery type thing. that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
And they really, some of the top takeaways of there was a lot of wild stuff. I followed some telemark presentations. I followed some snowboard. I followed alpine. I followed adaptive. It's I guess the one thing I'm most interested in is the sense of community. And once again, shows like what you guys have here, events like Interski. I really do think it's about welcoming more people into the community. And there are all these people I have not seen for 7 months. I'm going to see again when this ski area opens. And I'm going to feel like I'm back in my element again. And I'm going to catch up with folks that, for whatever reason, we just don't catch up in the summer. But every one of us have that at our local hill. We're like, hey, we're back. We're all together again. What have you been doing? And so that's, and I think that, man, how do we just keep growing the community? And to have an international focus on that was the takeaway. When you asked me about going to how I got into this, and I would go to team training in the past, the different disciplines wouldn't really talk to each other or hang out together very much. That took a long time for that to happen. It's like, hey, you guys are over there, you guys are over here, and every discipline had its own feel. And now just in our group to see, who knows who's sitting at the table together. But to see that happening on an international level as well, that once again, I think I said this 20 minutes ago, whatever you show up with, whatever you want to ride, this is the crew that'll help you have a better time doing it.
That's cool. And I can see that because there was a lot of stuff that came back, excuse me, from our team in terms of just in the articles, the ones you wrote, that that's a lot to follow, just what our team's doing. Never mind all the other countries. It's like we need like 10 reporters, I think.
Yeah, we have George does a fantastic job. Yeah. Andy Stein, who's in marketing, is I think he's also a meteorologist.
Oh,
so he's got this other insight that just, and he has that weatherman voice. He's very good at it. But I think to me going forward, I want to hear more about what members want to write and talk about. So back to your question, Dave.
Yeah.
That I think that's an opportunity for, hey, this is, if it's important to somebody out there to talk about or think about, then let's hear it.
Yeah.
Man, let's hear it.
Yeah. It's, if people don't write, we don't get the Snowpro or Easton newsletter, and if people don't put stuff into 32 degrees, we don't have those things to read. I mean, I know when they come, I open them right up and start going through what's going on in there. That's what gets me fired up, especially this time of year.
Well, that's once again, when you asked me at the top of the show here, why this is such a great place to work. It's because everybody has these stories, and we get on the chair and we hear those stories, and some of those stories, after a while, a lot of people hear them because they're just really good stories.
Yeah,
and people want to tell them. We're out there living every day.
Yeah, and I know Angelo would like to ask you, because this was something he thought was pretty cool, and I know you've been involved with it. It's the Mountain Gazette is rolling again. You were heavily involved with them over the years. They've had a couple periods there where they haven't had publications going out, but they're going out again. Are you still writing or doing anything with the Mountain Gazette? What did they hit? 200 publications or something, Angelo?
200th issue, correct?
Yep.
And I'll tell you, David, I'll just say it's an absolutely beautiful piece of work to hold in your hands. Like it's a large magazine. Pete probably knows the specific dimensions of it, but it's tall and it's big, and the artwork is unbelievable. I think anybody listening who doesn't know about the Gazette should take a look at it.
There it is.
Look at that. Look at that cover.
I can't fit it on the screen. So I actually ran editorial for these guys for about a year and a half. And it was where I started to test drive a lot of chapters for the God of Skiing.
Huh?
And it really is the history of this magazine. Hunter S. Thompson wrote for them. All the big outdoor writers had columns there. And for a long time, it was just free in Colorado. And then it was free kind of across the Rockies. And it just hit a couple bumps in the road over the years. And there's a guy, Mike Rogie. And Mike Rogie grew up in upstate New York, but worked at Powder, does beautiful video. And he bought the magazine a couple of years ago, like 4 years ago, I guess. And he's actually somebody I communicate with every day, so I'm a little biased. He probably texted me while we were talking. We all had high hopes for what Mike was going to do. We didn't imagine that there's something this awesome. We were like, "Hey, Mike's going to do good work," and then now it's like, "Oh my God, this guy took the roof off." It's gorgeous. And I've got a book I've been working on called The Ghost Hotel. And it's about 4 or 5 trips that really defined the rest of my life, starting in 2009 in South America. And so there are 5 installments of The Ghost Hotel before I'll have the book ready. And Mountain Gazette has now published 3 of them. And so the one in my essay in this issue is called the Snow Show. And it's about the trade shows and all the behind the scenes crazy stuff that used to happen when we all used to get together at this big event every year. But what Mike has done, I guess there's some bookstore in Manhattan right now that has 10 issues for sale that is one of the premier places to get magazines in Manhattan. I'm trying to help me out here, Angelo. I'm trying to think that there's nothing else that shows up at my door that's that exciting. And I was talking to a couple of people at some of the ski companies this year, and it didn't feel like we had the anticipation that we usually have, just because snow sports media is kind of trying to figure itself out again. And right now we used to, like 5-6 years ago, we'd get bombarded with 3 or 4 magazines saying, buy this, go here. Season's coming. It's going to be a blast, and some really cool essays. And I feel like we're still trying to find our way, that where do we go with media from here? Obviously, video is going to continue to lead the charge. But is there still room for more print? Is there still room for, and what you guys are doing again? This, how do we get the consumer to find us at this place too? Right? I mean, because a lot of this is kind of inside baseball.
Yeah. But
so how do we continue to invite the consumer to join us on these adventures? And I think Mountain Gazette you're like, holy cow, I can't wait to go outdoors. And to Angelo's point, I've had this magazine for 2 weeks now. I've read 2 stories, because they're real long form. It's real long form journalism. It's not just.
I'll tell you what, I engage with the ski world daily because of it's my job and it's what I do. But when that magazine shows up and I read the stories, it makes me feel like an insider.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot of ads, right? It's the stories, it's the journalism that's in it. It's when I've been reading about it, there's not a lot of like ad.
No, if he wanted to, he could do 300 pages. You got to draw the line somewhere. And he could also probably do 4 issues a year. But I know how hard he works just on 2. And that he went for a nice vacation with his wife and boys after this issue 200 came out. And he got home and was right back into the grind.
Oh, man. So, well, that's awesome.
Make the donuts? Was that what? Yeah. Yeah, it was.
So what do you think about an article and on some of the things like our sponsors do for us? For example, Nordica just came out with a pretty incredible video series with our cert level 1, 2, 3. I thought it was pretty amazing the time that they put into it to get out there. Everyone's quiet.
Oh no, I was waiting for the question. You said.
Oh well, I'm just curious is that worthy of an article? I would think so. In terms of, I think it's great that one of our sponsors, even though it isn't, Angela and I were like, damn, why didn't Blizzard Technica do this? But for Michael and Megan and Troy to be out there and Nordica put a lot of time and effort and incredible video crew. I mean, it's a great production that was done kind of on the outside of our regular educational world, but given to our members.
I think that the cool thing about it, other than what you said, and it just very much people you want to hear this inside scoops from, that it also applies to, it also has international implications. It's not just one country, that anybody who wants to improve and earn advanced certification can use this. And we have been at PSIA, the Snow Pros has been publishing part 1, part 2, part 3, and then next Monday, part 4, one part of the series a week. So that is being broadcast. I think that this is something that Nordica did on their own. This isn't something that someone else came to them and said, "Hey, can we do this with you?" So I think that when you ask that question, that's the opportunity for the brands to discuss. That's where they want to focus, and that's. I'm trying to think of because it really is a fantastic series, and at the same time, I'm thinking of all these. There's a lot of other initiatives that I've seen over the last couple of weeks. And not in this exact purview, but just in different areas, like getting more women on the snow, getting more diversity on the snow. And that I don't like how that sounds. Encouraging more and welcoming more diversity on the snow. That's a better statement.
Angela, what do you got for here as we finish up?
We recently had a character on the show, Pete, and I know is pretty important to you. And I wanted to just give you an opportunity to talk about Porter for a minute, and his induction into the Hall of Fame. And
let me shut my window because my neighbor has the wheat leaf blower on, and I'll tell you what I think.
Note to self. Edit out weed blower comment.
So Porter's just anybody who knows Porter has been influenced by Porter in a positive way. That he's just a positive force wherever he goes, and he sees things and gets them. And so I'm a big hockey fan, and my team is the Avalanche, and Porter's son played pro hockey in Europe. And so every year when I have seen Porter at National Academy, the first thing I say is, can the Avalanche win the cup this year? And every year Mike would say, probably not. And then 2 years ago, he said, Pete, I think this is the year. And of course he was right. Because he knows everything. And we're skiing around Finland. And Porter comes to Interski every year. Really, he's kind of the backstage pass that he'll let you know why what each country is presenting is important to what they're actually teaching. And so he's got the inside scoop on what each international delegation, why they're doing what they do. And he gives everybody an overview. It's basically the crib sheet. And so we're skiing around and we get to the one side of the mountain and it's like, man, it's a lot colder over here. And Porter immediately explains to me the local weather. Because he's just, wherever he goes, he's just on it. But he's done that for this association for decades. He's been the glue. And I think that anybody who's come through the team, anybody who's had interactions with him, they will tell you a similar story. My takeaway from him being inducted is how hard it can be to quantify the impact each instructor has. So if you're talking about an athlete, you just look at the win total. But if you're talking about how an instructor, how many people, once again, going back to earlier in our conversation, how many people did you get over the threshold that say, man, I'm here forever. I'm never leaving. How many people did you give such a better experience that they introduced someone else in their family to the sport? And that every instructor has that impact, but it's hard to sit down and just put a list together and say, hey, you did this. And Porter, I did see his nomination packet, and it was quantified. There's a list of bullet points, and it doesn't begin to cover half of what he actually did. But if you want to say, does this guy deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? But hell yes. And I would hope that it's a long line to come. I'm not going to call them out right now, but I can think of a few other people in this association who would certainly deserve the nod.
Peter, thanks for telling the stories. And just like, even if you didn't write it down, you were talking about it with Mr. Porter, because he is an icon and a legend and just amazing. And I say that, and I haven't had the pleasure of skiing with him. It's just knowing of him and the things I read and all the things that he's done over the years from way back in the 70s on the team. So he's a pretty impressive. And for you to write all the stories and the information and the things going on, what we're doing and what the organization is doing is pretty cool. And I'm super psyched that we were able to have you on and let our listeners know who's the person writing those cool articles about all of what's going on with PSIA-AASI. And we hope to have you back. Would be great sometime. Chat about some things. And you got some cool skis in the back, so we'll definitely have you back there on the wall. Yeah. But thanks so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, there's just so many good people in this industry. You can't name them all, but I encourage people to go out and meet them.
Cool.
Yeah. And just to clarify for anybody who listening who wanted to check out the video series that Nordica did, if you go on YouTube and search Nordica Pro Series, the 3 videos they made come right up, and they are definitely worth a look. They did a nice job.
Also go just to drive traffic. You can also go to the snowpros.org.
You can also go to the snowpros.org if you're searching for that video series as well.
Yeah. Thanks everybody out there for listening. This has been The Fall Line with Chaos and Company.